everyone. Welcome to Crime in Court. This is the 1996 Menendez brothers retrial. We're reading through the transcript. This is Erik and Lyle Menendez on trial for the homicides of their parents, Kitty and Jose. And so we are picking up with the state's case. We're on part 37. And we're going to continue testimony for the mechanical engineer, Dr. McCarthy. So he was on the stand on their Friday. So in 1995, their Friday, he was on the stand. He started his testimony, and then he had some other engagement on Monday, so he couldn't be on the stand. So this is like so messed up. So in the middle of his testimony, he had to leave to go do some presentation or something. And now it's Tuesday, and he's back on the stand at their trial in October of 1995. And I have mentioned in previous episodes that we were talking about mechanical versus biomechanical. So I pulled up a description for you guys. Let me actually move this and make it bigger. I can't read that. So I just grokked it. That's too big now. Hold on 1 second. Okay, that's better. So I asked Grok, is there a difference between a mechanical engineer and biomechanics engineer? And if so, please provide explanation. It says, yes, there is a difference between a mechanical engineer and a biomechanical engineer, though they share some of the foundational principles. Here's a clear explanation. So a mechanical engineer, and I've stated this before, so they deal more with like machines. So mechanical engineering is a broad discipline that involves the design, analysis, and manufacturing of mechanical systems, such as machines, engines, vehicles, and industrial equipment. Ask yourself, why are they bringing a mechanical engineer to talk about injuries to a human body? So just keep this in mind as we go through his testimony. So mechanical engineers work on systems like HVAC, robotics, automotive components, aerospace structures, and energy systems. Their expertise is in mechanics, thermodynamics, fluid dynamics, material science, and computer-aided design. So that's my boyfriend. He's a mechanical engineer. All right, so a biomechanical engineer is a little bit different. So biomechanics is a specialized subfield that applies mechanical engineering principles to biological systems. So alive systems like humans, particularly the human body or other living organisms. They study how forces interact with biological structures such as bones, muscles, joints, or tissues. So if you're talking about injuries to a human body, or two human bodies in this case, Jose and Kitty, why are we bringing a mechanical engineer to the table? A mechanical engineer is the type of engineer, and this is my boyfriend's brain, like he can take something apart in his brain and put it back together in a completely different and unique way than I've ever would have even imagined. People like that are like geniuses in their own way, in like the how to design things type of way. So what are they doing testifying as to the injuries of a human body? I just have questions. So a biomechanical engineer will use prosthetics, orthopedic implants, medical devices, or they'll analyze human movement for sports or rehabilitation. They would combine mechanical engineering. So if you're a biomechanical engineer, that means you have the foundational knowledge of a mechanical engineer, but you're applying it then to biology, physiology, human living organisms. They use tools like motion capture, finite element analysis, or tissue modeling, whatever those things are. Their work focuses on living systems. Again, so I don't think I need to read the rest. I just wanted to get the point across that this dude, Roger McCarthy, Dr. McCarthy, he may have a PhD in mechanical engineering, but he does not understand how mechanical systems or other things can affect the human body or living things. So he's got a different set of skills. So I really wanted to point that out before we went on with his testimony. So now that we've gone through the basis of that, let's get to testimony. Let me fix the screen here. Okay, I think that's good. So, like I said, we are on Tuesday, November 14th, 1995. And the court says in the trial, the defendants are in the court, their lawyers are here, the people are here, the witness is here, the jury is here, and we'll have them come out. The jury enters the courtroom, and the following proceedings were held. The court says, "Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We are ready to resume with the trial. The witness is again on the stand. Would you state your name again for us, please?" The witness says, "Roger Lee McCarthy." The court says, "All right. I will remind you that you're still under oath and we are in direct examination." So the state is still asking their questions. The witness says, "Yes, Your Honor." Roger McCarthy was called as a witness and he was previously sworn in. The following resumed in trial. All right, so Mr. David Kahn for the state is asking questions. He says, "Dr. McCarthy, I believe when we last spoke, we had completed going through 4 of a series of 12 shots that we will be discussing today, and I would like to direct your attention at this time to a shot fired in that sequence of 12 as depicted in an illustration which is marked Shot 5A and which has been identified in this proceeding as Exhibit 258. Real quick reminder, this guy created all the diagrams and stuff that the new ME, so the ME that actually autopsied the bodies did not testify. A different ME testified, and he didn't really want anything to do with these diagrams. The diagrams are inaccurate. He says his little doll that he made was inaccurate. So he said the best way to determine where the injuries were and what they were like is to look at the images, the photographs. So this guy is with failure analysis and he created the diagrams. Mr. Khan says, "Can you tell us once again, before I question you about the materials you relied upon in forming your opinion concerning that shot, what is it that illustration, shot 5A, exhibit 258 depicts?" "The general location in my reconstruction where the fifth shot was received. It's between the coffee table and the sofa. And in my I think my mic went out for a second. Um, so I don't know if you heard the last thing I said. I don't know. So what was I saying? It's between the coffee table and the sofa, and in my reconstruction, I believe that she is now horizontal. So that is discussing the fifth shot. I mean, they're like all of the shots are confusing, right? Anyways, so all right, and that particular shot that is being fired there is striking the victim, Kitty Menendez, in what parts of her body? Basically, the right arm, the lower forearm, and the upper arm near the shoulder. The shot strikes, the same shot creates both wounds in my reconstruction. Okay, and once again, did you rely upon certain x rays and photographs in forming your conclusion regarding that particular shot that was fired? Ms. Abramson says, objection, Your Honor, lack of expertise. The court says, overruled. The witness says, yes. Mr. Khan says, all right, if we can once again dim the lights a bit, I would like to direct your attention to one x-ray, a photograph of an x-ray that has been marked in this proceeding as Exhibit 167. I believe that Dr. Lawrence testified that this x-ray that we are now looking at as is an x-ray of the upper right arm of Kitty Menendez. Can you tell us what information you relied upon in forming an opinion concerning the shot that you have illustrated in the diagram that is before the jury at this time? Yes, this is an x-ray of Mary Menendez's right arm. This is an upper arm here. This is the shoulder, and you can see the large buckshot as the opaque white circles on the x-ray, and the upper arm here is broken. Okay, I would like to direct your attention now to another x-ray, 7 x-ray, which has been marked in this proceeding as Exhibit 173, and this is an x-ray which I believe Dr. Lawrence identified as an x-ray of the lower right arm of Kitty Menendez. Can you tell us what information you relied upon in this x-ray in forming an opinion concerning the shot that has been described as shot 5? This is where, in my reconstruction, the lower forearm was shot. As Dr. Lawrence mentioned, you can see the small lead particles that were left behind by the shot striking the bone. I'd like to direct your attention to a photograph which has been marked in this proceeding as Exhibit 190, in which you have designated 5 Mary in your presentation. Can you tell us what information in this photograph you relied upon in forming an opinion concerning the shot that has been depicted as 5? This is the right forearm of Mary, and you can just make out the fingers to the right of the photograph. It gives you some idea of the orientation. You can also see that the wound has a bias that is an angle relative to the axis of the arm. Okay, and how would you describe that bias for us, please? In this particular shot, it's clearly going up and to the left, and that will have significance in the other photos. And is that bias that you have just shown us consistent with a bias that you depicted in the illustration that is currently before the jury in shot 5A? And obviously, any hypothesis has to consider the directionality of that shot. Well, I'd like to direct your attention now to another photograph which you have designated 7 Mary and which we have marked in the proceeding as Exhibit 192. Can you tell us what we are looking at here? This is the upper shoulder of Mary Menendez and shows the wound to the front, to the elongation. It's longer than wider. Does the fact that it is longer than wider have some significance to you in arriving at the conclusion you reached concerning shot 5A? Ms. Abramson says, objection, Your Honor, lack of expertise. Sustained. The fact that it is longer than wider is that something that you sought to take into consideration in forming an opinion concerning shot 5? Ms. Abramson says, same objection, Your Honor. The court says, unless you can establish some medical expertise on the part of the witness or that he relied upon the opinions of medical experts, sustained. Mr. Khan says, okay. Did you rely upon the opinions of any medical experts in regard to the specific shape of that wound as described in any of the coroner's reports? As I sit here, I don't recollect doing so. Okay, let me move on to the next photograph. A photograph which you have designated 13 Mary in your classification system, which we have marked here as Exhibit 197. And can you tell us what information you relied upon in this photograph in forming an opinion concerning that 5th shot? Yes. The orientation of the wound in the upper right arm to the wound in the lower right arm, you can still see in the angularity the bias of this. The positioning was done by the coroner who just took the picture. So I believe, though, that whether or not you move this arm a little further down, perhaps to pick up that bias perfectly, it represents from just the geometry, a reasonable juxtaposition of the arm and the shoulder, and also if she is lying down, obviously for the autopsy, and if the shot were received in this position, that lines up pretty well geometrically. So that's what he's basing all of this on, because he can line things up geometrically. But that doesn't necessarily mean that he knows how it affects the human body, because he is not a biomechanical engineer. All right, so next question, Mr. Khan says, and did you, in forming an opinion concerning this fifth shot, did you also rely upon the opinion of Dr. Lawrence, who associated those two wounds together? That is the wound to the lower right arm and the wound to the upper right arm? Relying on both the coroner and Dr. Lawrence, who associated these two wounds. All right, all right. Does that complete the series of photographs for that particular shot? Yes. All right, if we may just raise the lights once again, I would like to direct your attention back to the illustration that has been marked 5A. And once again, I would like to ask you concerning this illustration, which you have prepared the same question that I asked you concerning the other illustrations, and that is, what is the essential information that you are seeking to communicate through this illustration? Basically, a general directionality to the shot. Obviously, that green line would move depending on if you moved the arm a little bit one way or another, and this is not her final position, that is on the right-hand side. But this shot is received in the right arm, which is in the final position, it's on top. So the shot has to be received earlier than the final position to expose the part of her body. So it's a general depiction of what I think is the general angularity, her position at the time of the shot. It looks consistent with the geometry and the placement of the wounds. Okay. In this illustration, you have depicted, for example, her right leg being in a particular position. This is slightly under the coffee table. Can you say with any certainty whether that accurately represents the precise position of her right leg at the time the shot was fired? No, I cannot. In my reconstruction, this shot does not involve the legs, so they could have been straight. They could have been bent the other way. I just put her in a reasonable position there, but I can't testify that her left arm was in that position either, or that her head was not cocked to one side or another. It's basically the general orientation of what I believe occurred on this shot, and the position I believe she was in the room when she was shot. Okay. Before we get further into what you mean by those terms, let me show you what appears to be another illustration of the same shot. I would like to show you what is marked on the exhibit itself as shot 5B, and which has been marked in the preceding as exhibit 259. Can you tell us what we are looking at in this illustration? Again, it's the same geometry, just from a different angle, because my plots necessarily are flat. It just gives you another angle on the same shot and shows the general directionality, again, with all the qualifiers that I can't say her left arm was in that position or her feet were in that position. So what's the point of this reconstruction that I'm using the term loosely? Because if you don't know how she was positioned and where she was and all that, then you can't be sure. And this is all just your speculation, your assumptions. Now, can you tell us why for this particular shot, shot 5, as illustrated in both the illustration marked shot 5A and shot 5B, where the arm is positioned on the floor for this particular shot? Ms. Abramson says, Your Honor, I object. This was asked and answered last week. Court says, overruled. The witness says, because of the geometry, the shot has to graze over the top of the forearm, as Dr. Lawrence testified, and the picture speaks for itself. It has to go through the shoulder. It has to be on the right side, so the right side has to be exposed. If you look at a scene of the room with the bodies removed, her blood is in this area. So, regardless, I believe she had to receive the shot in this position because of the bleeding that would have occurred. If she had been somewhere else in the room, we would see blood there. Ms. Abramson says, we would object to that, Your Honor. There is no expertise in blood spatter. Yeah, he's not an expert in blood spatter, so how could he be talking about that? But whatever, the court overrules it. Mr. Khan says, and can you tell us why you depicted this particular series of wounds to her right arm, to her lower arm, and to her upper right arm as being the fifth shot in this series of 12 that we are representing to the jury? Well, the next shot in series, which I believe is shot 6, I believe has to follow shot 5, and it has to be in the order for the reasons that the coroner and I think Dr. Lawrence mentioned. You saw from the x-ray, it was obvious that her upper arm is broken. The right arm is broken through here. I mean, I can bring the x-ray back up. So its arm loses its skeletal mechanical effect. It is just not mechanically an element anymore. Ms. Abramson says, objection, Your Honor, beyond his expertise, which it is because, as we know, mechanical engineers don't speak to what happens to the body or living things. The court says the last portion of the answer regarding the skeletal effects is stricken as beyond the witness's expertise. So, hey, that objection worked, and she was right because he's not a biomechanical engineer. Makes a big difference here. Mr. Khan says, okay, you indicated that the victim at this point would have had a broken arm as testified to by Dr. Lawrence. Is that correct? Correct. And then how does that assist you in determining that this was the fifth shot in the series? Well, the next shot in my reconstruction involves the right hand in a different position, and it is consistent with the location of the hand in the next shot. That this shot, breaking the arm, would also move the hand upward and position it for the next shot. Let me show you what has been marked as Exhibit 260 in this proceeding and which is designated on its surface as Shot 6A. Can you tell us what we are looking at in Exhibit 260? This is my reconstruction of the orientation and geometry of the sixth shot. Can you tell us the portions of the body that are being struck in this illustration? This would be her right hand area and her upper throat, chin, clavicle area. Okay, did you rely upon certain photos and x-rays in forming an opinion regarding the manner in which this particular shot took place? Yes. What's his build the foundation of what his expertise is in reading x-rays? Because so far, I don't know that he can read an x-ray. I don't know that he is accurate or knowledgeable in determining where there might be fractures or things or um, any kind of medical training because he doesn't have it. All right, if we can dim the lights once again, please. I would like to direct your attention once again to what has been marked as 167. That is one x-ray. Once again, this is an x-ray that Dr. Lawrence testified presents not only the upper right arm, but the upper right shoulder area of Mary Louise Menendez. Can you tell us what information you relied upon in this x-ray in forming an opinion concerning shot 6? Here in my reconstruction are the pellets from shot 6 in her right shoulder. You can see the mean distance between the pellets, and there is a big gap here between the group, which is my shot 5, and this group, which is my shot 6. And what do you mean by the term a mean distance? Well, just that if you just look at the average separation between two pellets here, it's clear this is a group. Also, it is clear this is a group. So he's pointing as he's talking. It is also clear that the distance between the two groups exceeds the distance between any two adjacent pellets. Okay. So you attribute the shot to the shoulder area as being distinct from the shot to the upper right arm area. as did Dr. Lawrence. Yes. I'd like to direct your attention now to another x-ray that you have previously testified to, 7 x-ray, which is marked as Exhibit 173 in this proceeding. Once again, this is an x-ray of the lower right arm, and here we can see that it also depicts the right hand of Mary Louise Menendez. Can you tell us what information you relied upon in this x-ray as it relates to shot 6? Yes, you can see the opaque little specks Dr. Lawrence testified to concerning pieces breaking off the shot, and we see a pellet here, or part of a pellet, down by what looks like the right forefinger. Directing your attention to photograph 6, Mary, which we have marked in this proceeding as Exhibit 191, I'd like to ask you what we are looking at here. And this is a shot of Mary's right hand. And what information did you rely upon in this photograph in assisting you in formulating an opinion concerning shot 6? Both the x-ray and the defects are consistent with the hand being shot with number 4 buck, as the people have indicated. Directing your attention to photograph 9, Mary, which was marked in this proceeding as Exhibit 193, can you tell us what is depicted in this photograph? This is the upper clavicle and right neck, throat, shoulder area, and you can see the defects here. I'd like to direct your attention to photograph 10, Mary, which has been marked in the proceeding as Exhibit 194 and which depicts the right side of the face of Mary Louise Menendez. Can you tell us what information you relied upon in this photograph? Yes, you can see again number 4 buck down in the lower right chin area. Directing your attention to 12, Mary, which has been marked in this proceeding as Exhibit 196. Did you say 12, Mary? I'm sorry? 12, Mary, yes. Can you tell us what information you relied upon in this photograph depicting the shoulder and the facial area of Mary Louise Menendez? Again, you can now see in the same picture the separation between the upper shoulder wound, which is my shot 5, and this area of wound, which is my shot 6. You can see the elongated nature of the defect here, and you can see the injuries under the right chin. And when you speak about the elongated nature of the injury, what are you referring to specifically? Ms. Abramson says, "Objection, Your Honor, this has already been objected to." The court says, "Are you asking him to give an interpretation or just point out where it is?" Mr. Khan says, "Yes. If you would just point out the elongated nature of the wound that you're referring to." And he does. He says right here. All right. And let me direct your attention specifically to the wounds that appear in the lower jaw area of Mary Louise Menendez. This particular wound right here, which is almost under her chin. Did the location of that wound have any significance to you in forming an opinion in regard to the angle or the trajectory at which this particular shot was fired at the victim? Yes. In what way? Well, to come under the chin, you have to be coming under the chin to the wound. So obviously the head would have to be oriented to present the chin, or in my reconstruction, the angle is such that with her head down, with her head to the right, which I believe it was, to bring the group of the right side of her chin in contact to the right side of her shoulder. And then underneath the jaw would be consistent with lying down at a low angle, shot from beneath her feet. Huh? Okay. I'd like to direct your attention now to photograph 13, Mary, which has been identified in this proceeding as Exhibit 197. Can you tell us what information you are relying upon in this photograph to assist you in your reconstruction of shot 6? This was the positioning of the coroner of the hands, the wound to the upper right shoulder and to the bottom chin, and I believe the coroner is correct in his placement. Okay. And once again, directing your attention to photograph 16, Mary, which has been marked in this proceeding as Exhibit 199. Can you tell us what information you relied upon in this photograph in assisting you in forming an opinion concerning shot 6? Again, if the head is turned away, you open up a large amount. This is again the coroner's placement. If the head is turned away, you open up a huge space between the wounds on the chin and the face and the wounds. So I believe the coroner placed correctly the preceding shots, and you also get this is a good elongated depiction, depicting view right here. All right. Does that complete the series of photographs and x-rays you relied upon in forming an opinion concerning shot 6? Yes. Okay, if we may raise the lights once again. I would like to direct your attention back to the illustration that has been marked 6A, and I would like to ask you again, what is the essential information that you are seeking to communicate in this particular illustration? Again, the general direction and orientation, I believe, of the shot. You can see I haven't taken the head of the figure and moved it down to where the coroner had it positioned, right chin close to the right shoulder. I believe that the coroner's position is superior to my own there, but I was just trying to show the general direction of the shots. The general orientation of the hands and the left arm and the feet, of course, could have been anywhere. I have no independent basis to place them as I did here. Okay, let me show you at this time another illustration which is designed on the surface as shot 6B and which has been marked in this proceeding as Exhibit 261. Can you tell us what that illustration purports to represent? Yes. This is just the same geometry from another angle, more of a top view, and showing basically the directionality as established by the coroner in his position of the wounds on the body, and I have just now placed that in the scene. And I believe it had to be roughly in this location and roughly in this orientation. Okay. Now, moving on to the next illustration, I would like to direct your attention to an illustration designated Shot 7A, which has been marked in this proceeding as Exhibit 262. Can you tell us what this illustration purports to represent? Yes. In my construction, I have termed the shot to Joseph's left upper leg as shot 7. Okay. Now in this illustration, just to jump ahead, I am going to be showing you 3 more illustrations following this, which appear to direct shots to the leg of Kitty Menendez. That is in the subsequent 3 shots. Do you know with any certainty as to whether this particular shot, which appears to depict a shot to the leg of Jose Menendez, necessarily preceded the 3 shots to the leg area of Kitty Menendez? No, this shot cannot be benchmarked in time other than it occurred at some point and, as Dr. Lawrence testified, after his death. Can you tell us why you chose to designate this particular shot to Jose Menendez as shot 7 rather than later in the series of shots to the legs which go from shot 7 through shot 10? In my reconstruction, there is a natural break in the series there. If you note in my preceding 2 shots, I have them coming from the foot area superior on Mary Menendez. If you look at a general direction of where my shot reconstruction comes from, someone would be standing in this general area to shoot the weapon and deliver those shots. That would be a very dangerous place to stand during this shot. So I believe there had to be some movement. You wouldn't be standing there when this shot was delivered. Ms. Abramson says, objection, Your Honor, move to strike speculation. The court says, overruled, the answer will stand. Mr. Khan says, and did you rely upon the series of photographs and x-rays to assist you in formulating your opinion about this particular shot? Yes. Once again, if we could just dim the lights for a moment, I would like to direct your attention to 10 x-ray, which has been designated in this proceeding as Exhibit 176, and this x-ray, I believe, Dr. Lawrence testified, represents the injury to the upper left leg of Jose Menendez. Can you tell us what information you relied upon from this particular x-ray forming an opinion concerning shot 7? Yes, you can see the white specks. Again, as Dr. Lawrence indicated, the shot strikes the bone, and Ms. Abramson says, Your Honor, I'm going to object to that. That misstates Dr. Lawrence's testimony. The court says, is that your recollection of what Dr. Lawrence testified to? The witness says, yes. The Court says, okay, with that understanding that it's the witness's recollection, objection overruled. The witness says, but also, as Dr. Lawrence testified, it's a complete break. The leg is now completely broken. Dr. Khan says, I'd like to direct your, or not Dr. Khan, Mr. Khan says, I'd like to direct your attention to a photograph which you have designated to Joseph and which has been marked in this proceeding as Exhibit 186. And can you tell us what information you relied upon in this photograph in forming an opinion concerning Shot 7? Yes. This is the left leg of Jose, and as Dr. Lawrence testified, and the picture speaks for itself, I believe there is a slight bias detectable between the entry and the exit, and it's why the reconstruction has the angularity that it does. Although, a few degrees one way or the other isn't going to affect this. When you say it has a slight bias, can you be more specific and tell us the bias you're referring to? I've got a bias to the back of the couch. Okay. Obviously, I only have the position of the leg at the end of the shot. I don't have the position of the leg at the beginning of the shot. So the impulse of the shot, well, it obviously moved the leg some. It's just a question of how much, and so I can't with any precision tell you it came in at precisely this angle. Okay. Is that the only photograph that you relied upon for this particular shot? Yes. All right, if we can raise the lights once again, I would like to show you that same shot through another illustration which is marked 7B on the surface and which we marked here as Exhibit 263. Can you tell us what we are looking at in Exhibit 263? Again, it's another view of the same shot as before, showing the general direction of what I have constructed the shot to be. Now, once again, let me ask you about what essential information you are seeking to convey in this particular illustration. Basically, what I believe is the general direction of the shot and the orientation of Mr. Menendez when the shot was received. Again, the position of his hands, the particularity, the position of his legs. This is not the position of his legs in the final shot. It's sort of an intermediate position. And I did that intentionally because all I have is the final resting position of the feet. The leg was shot at some point in time. It's very possible, in fact, as I have indicated, it had to move some. It's just a question of how and what. So I have just shown an immediate foot position. All we know is the final rest position of his feet. Okay. Directing your attention to an unrelated figure in this illustration, for example, and that would be the illustration of Mary Louise Menendez, which depicts her arms in particular places. Do you have any idea what position her arms would have been in during the course of this shot? No. The right arm, I believe we have positioned because of the last shot, but the left arm, I can't vouch for that position or leg position at this time, at this point in time. No. Okay. All right. At this time, I would like to show you. And the witness cuts him off and says, excuse me, I said her left arm. I mean her right arm was positioned by the last shot. I am sorry. At this time, I would like to show you another illustration in the series, one that is labeled 8A on the surface and which has been marked in this proceeding as 264. Now, can you tell us what we are looking at there in Exhibit 264? This I reconstructed as the eighth shot, and it creates the wounds we see in the left leg of Mary Menendez. Now, this is going to be the first of 3 shots that will depict injuries to the left leg of Mary Louise Menendez. Can you tell us why you selected this particular shot to the left leg as the first in that series of 3? I really can't pin down the precise order, except I think the third one was the last one. But I can't say that this one was the first and the one we are going to see after 9 didn't precede it. I think there is a progression to these, but I can't prove it to you. All right. Then once again, did you rely upon some photographs and x-rays in forming an opinion concerning this particular illustration? Yes. I would like you to, if we can, lower the lights. Once again, the court says, Deputy Wolf, can we lower the lights? Mr. Khan says, I would like to direct your attention to the photograph that has been marked 1 Mary, and which we have designated in this proceeding as 186. Can you tell us what we are looking at there? We are looking at the left leg of Mary Menendez. We see the individual pellet defects here on the upper inner leg, and then the large combined defect in the lower leg here. When you say upper inner leg, is that consistent with the illustration that you have drawn? Do you know if that illustration has been drawn accurately as far as the exact positioning of the trajectory is concerned? None of this can be exactly positioned in a direct trajectory, as Dr. Lawrence indicated. The remaining evidence doesn't present exactness, but as I have indicated in my other drawings, I am trying to show the general directionality, and if you want to say it was over a few degrees to the left or a few more degrees to the right, it could very well possibly have been. Because depending on the depiction of the leg at the time of the shot, or the direction of the leg at the time of the shot, would determine obviously the orientation of the shooter and the leg. But basically, it's the general direction, and I believe this general orientation. All right, I would like to direct your attention next to the second photograph that is of an X-ray, two X-rays in your two X-rays in your designation, and 168 in our sequence of exhibits. All right, sorry guys, I had to pause for a second, so I don't know where I left off, so I gotta restart the question. Apologies. Mr. Khan says, all right, I would like to direct your attention next to a second photograph that is of an X-ray, two X-rays in your designation, and 168 in your sequence of exhibits. I believe that Dr. Lawrence testified that this is an X-ray of the left upper leg of Kitty Menendez. Can you tell us what information you relied upon in this X-ray informing your opinion on the illustration in shot 8? Ms. Abramson says, Your Honor, I'm going to object beyond his expertise. Overruled. The testimony that this leg is clearly broken and that this was a shot with buckshot because you can see it in the X-ray and you can see whole pellets and then parts that were obviously, as Dr. Lawrence indicated, broken by contact with the bone. Mr. Khan says, okay, I would next like to direct your attention. Ms. Abramson says, I object, Your Honor, misstates Dr. Lawrence's testimony. The court says, with the understanding this is the witness's recollection of the testimony and Dr. Lawrence's testimony is in the record for the jury to evaluate. The answer will stand. Mr. Khan says, I would next like to direct your attention to another photograph of an X-ray, 12 X-ray, which we have marked in this proceeding as Exhibit 178. This is an X-ray which Dr. Lawrence testified also depicts the left leg area of Kitty Menendez slightly lower than the X-ray which we have just been looking at. Can you tell us what you relied upon in this X-ray in forming an opinion concerning shot 8? Again, all the observations I said before, I think here this is a number 4 buckshot wound and breaks the leg. Okay. And finally, as the last in the sequence of photographs, I would like to direct your attention to 17 Mary, which we have marked in our series of the exhibits as Exhibit 200. Can you tell us what we are looking at there? We're looking at the wound from the slightly different angle, and you can see here the top. You can't quite see the individual pellet defects, which would be up here at the top of the picture. You can see the exit. You can see in this orientation, it appears through the top of the leg and out the lower left side. But again, since the leg is broken, it's difficult to orient it by the coroner for precise positioning for pictures. And can you tell us? Ms. Abramson says, I would like to strike that last answer, Your Honor. It's beyond the personal knowledge of what the coroner did. The court says, sustained. That portion of the answer regarding any difficulty the coroner had in orienting the leg is stricken. Ms. Abramson says, thank you. Mr. Khan says, and can you tell us what information you relied upon in this photograph in forming an opinion concerning the shot that you have designated shot 8? You do have a bias that has to be accounted for in the reconstruction across the leg, and I have attempted to do that consistent with the other positions. Because this shot can't be reconstructed in isolation, it has to be part of the sequence. All right. Is that the last photograph in this sequence of photographs? Yes. All right. If we can raise the lights once again, I would like to direct your attention back to illustration 264, which is labeled 8A. And once again, I would like to ask you, what is the essential formation that you are seeking to communicate through this illustration? Basically, that the shot geometry is generally in the location and the position indicated. Again, there could be some angular difference, and I can't position it. We know the wound crosses the leg, but at precisely what angle and precisely what angle the shooter was and the leg was at that moment, I can't tell you. I believe this is part of the next sequence, as I'll indicate in the next shots in terms of occurring at that point in time. But basically, just trying to indicate the fundamentals of the geometry. I don't know where her right leg is. I don't know. I have left her right hand in the position of the earlier shot for the reasons I have indicated, but I do not know where her left hand is. That was a long winded explanation. Okay. Well, let me show you the illustration, which has been marked 265 in this proceeding and which is labeled 8B. Can you tell us what we are looking at in this illustration? Again, it's just the previous geometry from another angle. Again, if the leg isn't as far up, the angle changes. Okay, are you seeking in this illustration to communicate any information concerning the positioning of the legs of Jose Menendez? The legs have now assumed the final position that we see in the photographs. I have assumed that they ended up where they end up in the photograph now as a result of the last shot. Okay, if we can go back and perhaps I can show the jury this simultaneously. The last shot, shot 7B, you showed a shot to the left leg of Jose Menendez, and I believe that you depicted this as being slightly different than let me use this. I believe you depicted it as being slightly different in location than the shot which we are now looking at, which is shot 8B. Are you suggesting by that slight difference that it was shot 8B that is the latter shot that caused the movement in his leg? I am only saying it's possible. The leg could have been in the final position any time after in reconstruction shot 2. So I just don't know. So I don't want to have these have to be with more precision than I can assign. I think I have to acknowledge that the leg could have been moved by the shot to the knee. I accept that. We just know the final position. All right, all right. Let me now direct your attention to another illustration which has been marked 266 in this proceeding and which is labeled on its surface shot 9A. And would you tell us what we are looking at in this illustration? In my reconstruction, this is the approximate geometry and location of what I believe was the ninth shot. All right, and that is a shot to the lower left calf area of Mary Louise Menendez? Yes. All right, I would like to, if we could, dim the lights once again to direct your attention to a couple of photographs, beginning with photograph 4, Mary, which we have designated in the proceeding as Exhibit 189. And can you tell us what we are looking at in this particular photograph? Yeah, unfortunately, this is the wound we're looking at. And does that show its relationship to the other wounds looking at the leg from the front? That's right. Well, looking from the leg as it's shown in the x-ray. All right, let me direct your attention now to 15. The court says this is the photograph you're referring to. The witness says, yes, this is the photograph of the leg. Mr. Khan says, let me direct your attention to 15, Mary, which has been designated 198 in this proceeding. And does that depict the wound that you are referring to? And you can see it's got a bias. If you say that the bias on that leg is a little more than the bias of my finger, the leg could have been a little farther out. I mean, smaller angular differences is not what I'm trying to get at here. And what you sought to represent that bias in the illustration that is designated 9 shot, that is 9A, not terribly. It's almost a neutral shot in that regard. If there is a slight bias, the leg could have been up further. Either the leg is up farther or the shooter is a little lower. You can see this is front to the back. If there is a bias at all, it's front to the back, elevating, and this is the lower leg. So if you want a bias on a lower leg, front to back, elevating either the shooter, if a person were standing for the wound, the shooter would have to be on the floor, the weapon would have to be on the floor, or the leg would have to be kicked out or something to get that bias. So I haven't dwelled on that, but it's got to be the geometry, I believe, for the position, and it's a bias of her horizontal, and the shooter at approximately the angulation shown here. Okay, all right. If we can raise the lights once again, I would like to get back to the illustration 266 and ask you, what is the essential information that you are seeking to communicate in that illustration? Just that for the reasons I have indicated on the angulation, I believe that the geometry of this shot is very difficult to work unless, again, the individual is down. I believe the leg has to be raised slightly to make the angles come out. If you think the knee was a little less elevated, that's not important. I think there was some elevation to the knee to make the biases come out on the previous shots too. His explanations aren't satisfying me at all to any degree of scientific certainty. And in regard to the position of the right leg of Mary Louise Menendez or her left hand, are you seeking to communicate any information concerning their precise location at the time that the shot was fired? No, I can't tell you they were. I did leave again the right hand positioned at the last shot. I reconstructed that involvement. And showing you Exhibit 267, which is labeled on its surface shot 9B, can you tell us what we are looking at in this illustration? Again, it's another angle, another view of the same shot, and small angular differences I can't nail down from the wound. I believe this is the general geometry, and I believe it is in this location. As far as the depiction of Jose Menendez in that illustration, does that depict his final resting place? Pretty much schematically. I haven't tried to. Again, that figure is only matched height-wise to Mr. Menendez. It's not attempting to be his width, and so it's not a tortuously accurate picture of his position, but it's generally his position, yes. Okay, I'd like to direct your attention now to shot 10 in the sequence, and which begins with illustration 268, which is designated on the surface of shot 10A. Can you tell us what we are looking at in that illustration? We're looking at my reconstruction of now what is the 10th shot hitting her left leg, passing through the left leg, and in the geometry roughly indicated there. Okay. And before I ask you further questions concerning that shot in the sequence, I would like to direct your attention to some photographs and x-rays if we can dim the lights. Directing your attention to For Mary, an exhibit which has been marked 189 in this proceeding, did you rely upon this photograph in forming an opinion concerning shot 10? Yes. This is the wound I am trying to depict there, with the evidence in the back of the leg. This wound geometry and this placement of the leg in terms of the wounds we see there and the path. Directing your attention to 6 X-ray, which has been designated 172 in our exhibit list. This is an X-ray which Dr. Lawrence testified depicts the left arm of Mary Louise Menendez. Can you tell us what information, if any, you relied upon in this X-ray of her arm in forming an opinion concerning shot 10? We do have a pellet here in the lower left forearm, and I was relying on, let me put it this way. I noted that, and that makes some potential sense with this shot. Ms. Abramson says, Your Honor, I'm going to object to this. This is contrary to Dr. Lawrence's testimony about the injury. The court says, well, we haven't really heard the witness's explanation yet, so the objection is overruled. Mr. Khan says, yes. Can you tell us why you associate that injury to the left arm, which appears to depict appellate as described by Dr. Lawrence as possibly associated with the injury to the left leg of Kitty Menendez? If you look at my shot 10A and where her left arm is now, was her left arm there? I can't say for sure, and I can say this pellet is associated with this particular shot. It just happens to work. Ms. Abramson says, Your Honor, I'm going to move to strike as speculation. Overruled. Directing your attention now to an X-ray that has been designated 12 X-ray, which has been marked 178 in this proceeding. This is an X-ray which Dr. Lawrence described as depicting the upper leg area of the left leg of Kitty Menendez. Can you tell us what information you relied upon in this X-ray in forming an opinion concerning a shot that you labeled 10? His testimony and did his figures go? Are they gone now, his little dolls? The court says they are available if Mr. Khan wants to use them. The witness says, I am sorry. I believe, as he indicated, this is a through and through shot, hits the lower leg, and the upper leg creates the wounds as he testified to the inside of the knee, and so represents a true geometry consistent with the x-rays, and it was number 4 buckshot. Mr. Khan says, and is that illustration which you have prepared, which has been marked, shot 10A, also consistent with the trajectory as you understood it and as described by Dr. Lawrence in his doll that he prepared? Yes. And directing your attention to one final X-ray, 13 X-ray, which has been marked in the proceeding as Exhibit 179. This is an X-ray which I believe was testified to by Dr. Lawrence as depicting the body of Mary Louise Menendez. Can you tell us what information, if any, you relied upon in this X-ray? I wouldn't call it reliance. Again, we have a couple of pellets here that are distinct, are separated significantly geometrically. They could, as Dr. Lawrence testified, move in the chest cavity for reasons he indicated. He is more qualified than I, but we have a geometry in my reconstruction where it works in terms of stray pelleting in the lower extremity of Mary Menendez. Ms. Abramson says, Your Honor, I'm going to object to that as beyond his competence speculation. Overruled, but we need a clarification by what the witness means by it works. Mr. Khan says, yes, can you clarify that for us, please? Geometrically, no other basis than shot travel and direction. So all he's doing is basing his analysis on geometry, basically. He doesn't know anything. He's speculating most of the locations and body positions. He doesn't know. So he's speculating all of that, but he is just trying to figure out geometrically if things will work. So he's really not a solid, I don't think this is solid evidence, to say the least. Let's move on. Would that striking of the body in that particular place be consistent with the trajectory that you have illustrated in shot 10A? Ms. Abramson says, Your Honor, I'm still going to object. I don't think he's qualified as a ballistics expert. Overruled. Again. The witness says, it's consistent with the general area, recognizing, as Dr. Lawrence testified, and it's well known, once pellets strike bones, they can be deflected. Ms. Abramson says, Your Honor, I'm going to object to the witness's answer, conclusions as to what's well known. The court says, all right, the reference to what is well known is stricken, the rest of the answer will stand. Mr. Khan says, okay, and did you hear Dr. Lawrence testify to the fact that when pellets strike bone, they can be deflected? Yes. And is that opinion that you incorporated in your illustrations as you sit there today? It's certainly a fact I kept in mind, yes. All right. Once again, if we could raise the lights, I would like to ask you further questions concerning the shot that is illustrated in Exhibit 268, Shot 10A. You indicated that you concluded that this was the third in the series of 3 wounds to the left leg area of Mary Louise Menendez. Can you tell us why you designated this particular one was the last in the series? For the reasons, if we return to the earlier x-ray for the reasons I think Dr. Lawrence indicated when we looked at it. Okay, if you actually try to sift through his answers for an actual answer, there usually isn't one. I think he likes to use a lot of big words and has a lot of word salad, but I don't think that this guy is the most experty of experts. I think he's just one of those guys that can talk out of his you know what. If you recollect, oh, sorry, what was that's the witness is saying, if you recollect the previous x-ray, the leg is broken extensively around the knee, and I think, as the coroner also indicated, I mean, the knee is broken. This position, this angulation requires the knee to be in the air to get this angle of the shot passing through the back. I think it would be a more difficult assumption to make that after all that structural damage, the knee would stay upright in this position. And let me direct your attention now to another illustration, to 69, which has been marked, which appears on the surface to be designated shot 10B. Can you tell us what that illustration depicts? This is just the geometry of shot 10B from another angle. And what is the essential information that you are seeking to convey in this illustration? Again, the general physical direction I believe the shot occurred and the general positioning. Obviously, I am not going to fight over some angulation because it all depends on if you move the leg around. The shot, it ultimately moved around. But I believe the previous two shots and and this shot all work from the general leg position, slightly raised front to her on her back. If you try to make these shots work with her on her right, Miss Abrams says, Your Honor, I'm going to object to this point. The answer is no longer responsive. Court says, all right, it seems to be a little bit beyond the question. Next question, please. Mr. Khan says, would this particular shot be consistent with the body of Mary Louise Menendez turned over on its right at the time of the firings of this shot? You could postulate. It becomes a very torturous shot. The shooter has to get low, or you start thinking about the potential geometries of that, especially with now there is a coffee table that's going to present some real geometric problems to the shot if she is not on the back. So these three shots work again from the geometry, given the room and where she is. If she's lying on her back, if she is lying on her right, these are much more problematical shots to make. All right, let me direct your attention now to another illustration which has been marked 270 in this proceeding and which is designated on its face as shot 11A. Now, would you tell us what we are looking at in this illustration? Yes, this is my reconstruction of the 11th shot. And what does that illustration purport to reflect? The general geometry, the shot actually strikes the right side of her face, and I haven't shown the line exactly on the right side of her face, but this is the general direction that I believe the shot occurred. It strikes her left shoulder and I believe the left side of her face. Okay, all right. If we can dim the lights once again, I would like to direct your attention to some photographs beginning with 3 Mary, which we have designated in this proceeding as 188, and can you tell us what we are looking at there? This is the shot to her shoulder, the first point in my reconstruction that is struck by this shot. This shot is birdshot. You can actually see a little birdshot there. Okay, and the x-rays showed birdshot. Okay, I would like to ask what is the essential information that you relied upon in this illustration in assisting you in forming an opinion concerning shot 11? The position of the wound relative to the face wound, and also the type of ammunition that was used to create it. Depicting your attention now to 4 X-ray, the photograph of an X-ray that we have marked as 170 in this proceeding. This is a photograph which Dr. Lawrence said depicts the left shoulder area of Mary Louise Menendez. Can you tell us what information you relied upon in this photograph assisting you in forming an opinion concerning shot 11, sorry. Yes. It's the little dots are lead birdshot, and therefore a reconstruction of this wound can't associate it with any of the buckshot wounds because now we have switched ammunition. So Ms. Aronson says, "Objection, Your Honor. That's speculation on the part of the witness. Move to strike." The court says, "All right, from the word now, including we have switched ammunition, that entire portion of the answer is stricken." Mr. Khan says, "Okay, does this ammunition that is depicted in this particular X-ray appear to be a different type of ammunition from the ammunition that you have been describing in all the previous shots that we have seen so far?" Yes. Okay, and I would like to direct your attention now to another X-ray, 8 X-ray, which has been marked in this proceeding as Exhibit 174. This is an X-ray which Dr. Lawrence testified depicts the head area and the skull of Mary Louise Menendez. Can you tell us what information you relied upon in this X-ray in forming an opinion concerning Shot 11? Yes, you can see X-ray indications over here on the left side of the face consistent with the size and dispersion of the indications we saw of the preceding X-ray. Okay. Like, are you going to explain what any of that means? Like, again, he's just saying big words, and word salad is just spewing from him, and we're not getting real explanations of anything. And directing your attention to photograph 11 Mary, which has been marked in this proceeding as Exhibit 195, can you tell us what information you relied upon in this photograph to assist you in forming an opinion concerning Shot 11? Yes. This is her left face. You can just see the shoulder wound here down in this picture in the lower left, but you can see the wound created around her left ear. You can actually physically see a pellet there in the picture, and you can see the elongated travel of some of the pellets. Okay. When you talk about the physical pellet, are you referring, for example, to that little black object? Right there. He indicates on the image. And is that a piece of birdshot? Yes. I mean, I didn't pull it out, but it clearly looks like it. When you speak about the elongated nature of the wounds, what wounds are you referring to specifically? These defects. Okay, and you indicated that you can see the shoulder area in that photograph by manipulating that photograph with that little computer hand on the screen. Can you? No, unfortunately, there just isn't enough and you can't see it. It's too dark on yours. All right, does that complete the sequence of photographs for that particular shot? Yes. All right, if we can raise the lights once again, and directing your attention to illustration 11A, can you tell us what is the essential information that you are seeking to convey in that illustration? That the general geometry of this shot, that the indications of the X-ray would indicate a different ammunition, different pellet size, and that again, this geometry works in terms of orientations of the angle, the shoulder, the right side of the face now, and the left side of the face, you mean? Excuse me, left side of the face, which wouldn't have worked in the previous geometry. In other words, when she was on her back, this is a very difficult shot to do, but it could be done if she was rolled over on her right side. Directing your attention now to another illustration which is indicated on its surface as shot 11B, which has been marked in this proceeding as 271, can you tell us what we're looking at? Again, it's the same geometry from another angle, and again, depending on her precise position, the angulation would change. It's basically, I believe, it's again from the direction of from her feet towards her head, striking the shoulder, and then the left side of her face. And this general angle and this general position, again, geometrically works as a rational shot. So these are rational. All he's basically proving is that it's possible. The scenario that he's coming up with is possible. That's all he's proving. It's not proving anything. It's not, they're supposed to have the burden, the state. And this is not proving any kind of burden, in my opinion. And not to mention, the brothers already admitted to where they were standing and where the parents were and what was happening, but the state just doesn't want to accept their uh, uh, narration of the events. So by doing this, The whole recreation, I think it's a waste of time. And you're trying to disprove the brothers or prove the brothers. Because either way, like, you didn't really prove anything. So it's confusing to me. Okay, can you tell us why you depicted that particular shot, shot 11, as being the 11th in this series of 12 that we have been watching so far? This one is delivered when she, I believe, has to be on her right side because she is going to be hit on her left side. If you look at the overall final scene pictures, I think it's pretty clear she was in this position when she got these shots, and it also works for the final shot. And when you say when she got these shots, are you referring to the two final shots that is shot 11 and 12? Yes. Saberson says, Your Honor, I'm going to object. This is speculation, and I would object to the witness constantly saying it works as a conclusion on his part. The court says, objection sustained. But again, when you use the phrase it works, just explain what you mean. The witness says, okay. He has not done so yet. The court says, well, what do you mean when you use that phrase? The witness says, if I could show one couch, I can explain what. The court says, no, just generally, what do you mean when you say the phrase, it works? When it says, I'm sorry, Your Honor, when I say it works, geometrically, it lines up. It puts a shooter in a position he could react to the recoil of a 12 gauge, and it makes geometric sense. Ms. Abramson says, Your Honor, I'm going to move to strike then with regard to how shooters react to recoil as beyond his knowledge or expertise. The court says overruled, but there will have to be some explanations as to what he means by that. Mr. Khan says, yes. Once again, could you explain the term makes geometrical sense to us? The court says, no, I mean reaction, recoil, reaction. What does that mean? Mr. Khan says, could you explain that to us, please? Yes, the 12 gauge shotgun shoots a 1-ounce lead load. That means that there is significant impulse to the shooter when he shoots a 12 gauge as opposed to a much lower caliber weapon, which has much less energy and momentum leaving the barrel. Thus, when a person shoots a 12 gauge to send 1 ounce of lead down range at about 1,200 feet per second, that momentum has to be reached somewhere. Newton's law will be satisfied. That has to be reached by the shooter. Typically, with his shoulder, anybody who has fired a 12 gauge knows the impulse is substantially greater than lighter caliber weapons, which don't produce the momentum and the energy in their projectiles. Again, he's not a ballistics or gun expert. Like, why is he able to testify to this? But whatever. And directing your attention to a photograph, which has been marked in this proceeding as 201, in which you have labeled one couch. We can't see it on one couch. It's got to be two couch, he says. Two couches also been. We'll have to dim the lights for this one to be seen, says the witness. Like, okay, now you're just taking over the courtroom? Mr. Khan says, could you dim the lights, please? Directing your attention to two couch, that is the photograph that we have. Ms. Abramson says, Your Honor, I am objecting to these enlargements being made since the court ruled that can't be done by the witness. The witness says, excuse me? The court says, let's stick to what was provided to counsel. The witness says, okay. Mr. Khan says, directing your attention to two couch, which is the same as the photograph which has been marked in the proceeding as Exhibit 7, can you tell us if you relied on that photograph in forming a conclusion concerning the shots in this case? Yes. And what did you rely upon in forming your opinion? This is the wound to the left side of the face I talked about earlier. And by this wound, if you can describe it further, right there, he says, the patch of blood you see here, and he indicates on the image. Ms. Abramson says, objection, Your Honor, to his testifying it is a patch of blood. Overruled. What? Like, even officers aren't supposed to say that it's blood, or you're supposed to say, like, apparent blood, or what appears to be blood, but you don't just say, yeah, that's a patch of blood. Even officers who are testifying to their criminal, findings, they're going to say it was alleged until they know for sure that it was confirmed blood. So this is crazy that the court overruled that. Mr. Khan says, is that a wound to the vicinity of the left ear? Yes. Okay. And you can see the rivulet going downhill, and there's also one there from those wounds. And how did that assist you in forming an opinion? Ms. Abramson says, Your Honor, I'm going to object to that as well as beyond his expertise. The court says, okay, the reference to from those wounds is stricken as beyond the witness's expertise. Mr. Khan says, okay. The court says, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, there was an objection earlier to the witness enlarging certain of these photographs or focusing on a particular portion of the photograph and enlarging it, and I sustained the objection. The reason for that is that the prosecution provided to the defense and to the court a certain series of exhibits. Why is he explaining this to them? Certain photographs that will then be given to you during your deliberations, and we want you to have in the jury room the same exhibits as referred to here in court, and by enlarging something that creates a different exhibit than the one that you will have in the jury room, since they haven't prepared an enlargement of that is in hard form. So we have these photographs. When you hear the prosecutor referring to exhibit numbers, he is referring to the actual photograph that we have as an exhibit here that will be available. So you aren't going to have this type of display during deliberations. You will actually have the actual photographs. Okay, thanks, Judge. Mr. Khan says, and did you rely upon this final resting place as observed by the police in forming an opinion concerning the sequence of shots that were fired in this case? Yes, essentially, I have shown her in this geometric position in shot 11. All right. Once again, I would like to now direct your attention to a final sequence of photos and illustrations. First, directing your attention to an illustration which is designated 12A, which has been marked in this proceeding as 272. Can you tell us what we are looking at in that exhibit 272? Yes, this is my... Perhaps we can turn the lights on momentarily for this. This is my reconstruction of the final shot delivered as a contact shot to her left cheek, as Dr. Lawrence indicated. Okay, this may be difficult for the jury to see. Let me go over and point. Did you designate the trajectory in this particular shot as consisting of this green bar-like figure standing down towards the head of the victim? Correct. And let me put up at this time the last one, which might be better for the jury, illustration 12B, which has been designated in this proceeding as 273. Can you tell us what we're looking at? Again, it's just another angle on the same shot, and again, the exact angle of the weapon I can't tell you precisely from just a contact wound ring. It was delivered to her left cheek, and since it was a contact wound, the weapon had to be proximate to her cheek, and then the exact angle was as best I can reconstruct here. But don't get hung up on that. All right. If we can lower the lights once again, I would like to direct your attention to X-ray, a 5 X-ray, which has been designated in this proceeding as 171, and this was described by Dr. Lawrence as an X-ray depicting the head area of Mary Louise Menendez. Can you tell us what information you relied upon in this X-ray in forming an opinion concerning shot 12? Yes. First of all, we have numerous indications of the different shot diameter. Now you can see in the same X-ray, number 4, and the birdshot compared. Directing your attention now to a shot that is 8 X-ray, which has been designated in the proceeding as Exhibit 174, in which Dr. Lawrence described as a frontal view of the head of Mary Louise Menendez. Can you tell us what information you relied upon in this X-ray in forming an opinion concerning shot 12? Again, you see the small opaque shot dispersed throughout now the skull in this shot. Ms. Abramson says, objection, Your Honor, that's beyond his expertise, and this is not, and it's not apparent on the X-ray, and it's not testified to by Dr. Lawrence, the dispersed throughout the skull. Overruled. The answer will stand. Judge, why are you so unfair? I don't get it. He's not playing fair. He's being kind of a meanie butt. He's overruling every objection by the defense. Mr. Khan says, directing your attention finally to one more photograph, 12 Mary, which has been designated 196 in this proceeding. Can you tell us what information you relied upon in this photograph in forming an opinion concerning shot 12? Yes. Here's the wound location, and there has been ample medical testimony on the nature of that wound, that it's a contact wound, and I have just incorporated that in my reconstruction. All right. If we can raise the lights, I have just a couple more questions concerning shot 12. In this illustration, you have depicted the body of Mary Louise Menendez as lying on the floor at the time of the shot. Can you tell us what is the essential information that you are seeking to illustrate here as opposed to the non essential or variable information? Again, just where I believe the general position or geometry of the shot was. It occurred to her left side, so therefore I believe now we see here in the final position at the end of the sequence in my reconstruction on her right side, and it generally occurred in this orientation, but I can't precisely position the angle of the weapon at the time of discharge other than it was obviously very close. Can you tell us why you depicted the body of Mary Louise Menendez as lying on the floor at the time that she was shot, that the shot was fired? Sorry. Again, it's this is her final rest position, approximately schematically illustrated by my figure here. And so I have positioned her limbs roughly approximately to her final rest position. I believe this is the last shot. Mr. Khan says, "Thank you, Dr. McCarthy. I have no further questions at this time." Whew, that was a rough direct examination with all of those, basically going through all of those images and things. So Mr. Khan says, "Thank you, Dr. McCarthy. I have no further questions at this time." The court says, "Okay, we will take our recess and then start up with cross-examination. We will resume at 10 minutes to the hour. It's now approximately 10:30, and we will resume at 10 minutes to the hour." Then they take a recess, and we will continue in tomorrow's stream where we left off and keep going from there. Just an FYI, Dr. McCarthy is going to be on the stand for days. So just be prepared that it's going to be a while before we get through him. But once we're through him, then we're done with the state's case. We have a really brief examination of Les Zoller once again. And like I said, I told you early on that he was going to be called back many, many times. And this is yet another one. But then the state's going to rest after McCarthy and Zoller. So then we will begin the defense's case, which I'm excited to get into because I find it much more interesting and fascinating than this going through a bajillion different x-rays and photos and things and just having some guy blurt out some word salad about the geometry works. It just works. Like that's not I don't think that's scientific. I mean, he might have used science, but he doesn't seem all that scientific in his explanations, nor does he explain what he's talking about, which is a real problem for the jury. It can confuse the jury, and the jury could just be like, "Oh, he's an X-ray. He must know what he's talking about. He's saying all these big words. Whatever. I believe he's truthful, and whatever he's saying, it makes sense. So I'll just believe him." Even though you have no idea what he's saying. But as a juror, you're confused and you're just like, I don't want to parse it out in my brain. I'm just going to say he's reliable then and kind of ignore other aspects in the case when it starts to, conflict with that. So anyways, it's trials, juries, the way people think and the psychology of it all. It's so fascinating to me. So what do you guys think so far of Dr. McCarthy's word salad testimony? And I just want to get through his testimony because he's bad, but I think it's going to get more interesting once we get to cross-examination because I have a feeling he's going to be crossed for a very long time by Leslie because she was doing the question, she was objecting, so she's going to be doing the questioning for Erik's side. So that will be up next. So don't miss out. Make sure you are subscribed, hit the like button, and let me know what you guys are thinking about this case. And I will see you guys in the next one. Take care. Bye now.